Hi, this is John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm, and today we're going to talk about how long it takes to do probate here in Georgia. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos every Tuesday and Friday, and make sure you hit the like button because every like helps. All right, John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am the author of Estate Planning for the Modern Family, and I was recently voted one of the top 3 lawyers here in Cobb County, along with the law firm being voted one of the top 3 law firms located here in Cobb County, Georgia. Now, today we are going to talk about how long the probate process takes in Georgia. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to do a case study on 10 probate cases that were filed here in Cobb County, Georgia. Now, I know that the probate process, because we do probate here at the firm, there's really 2 things that we do. We do estate planning and probate work, and that's really all we do. So I'm very familiar with the probate process and how long it takes, but I wanted to get some real life case studies to work from. So I went back and reviewed 10 probate cases filed here in Cobb County. I didn't start with this year. Today happens to be the latter part of June of 2023. I didn't want to do anything for this year because I know it just happens to take more than 6 and 7 months to go through probate. So I started with January of 2022, which was about a year and a half ago. And what I did was I just simply reviewed the first 10 cases that came in and was filed in Cobb County to see what has happened with those cases since then. So there's a couple of factors that I looked into to determine how long the probate process takes here in Georgia. Again, we're going to do a case study on these 10 probate cases. So the first thing I did was just to determine when the case was filed. In other words, when someone went down to the courthouse and filed the paperwork to start the probate process. They were either asking the court to probate a will, or they were letting the court know that the person did not have a will, so the estate needed to be administered. And so those are simply the 2 paths you can take. You can take probate with a will, or you can take probate without a will. That happens to be called intestate, but those are the 2 paths that you can take. So of those 10 cases, 7 of them were filed the first date the probate court was open in 2022. The other 3 were filed the next day. So there were other individual things that were filed the first day. They were mainly, maybe someone was just filing the will at the courthouse so that they could have it on file. The other ones were essentially guardianship cases. The probate court handles those types of cases. But here are the 10 first cases filed in the year 2022 and what is going on with them today. All right, so the next thing that I looked at was, of those 10 cases, when was the letters testamentary or the letters of administration entered by the court? Now, a lot of people think that once you file the will at the court, you get the power to do all the things that you need to do. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. There is a process to this. The court's going to look over the will and make sure that it's a valid will, make sure there's the right numbers of witnesses, that the family's been notified, all kinds of things. And so what they will do is, if there's something wrong with the will, they'll let you know what it is, and you might have an opportunity to fix it. For example, maybe the will hasn't been proven, so you need to contact the witnesses. They'll let you try to contact the witnesses, and if you can get them to fill out paperwork to send in, then they'll accept the will. So they don't necessarily have to accept the will. First, it has to be a valid will, and then they'll accept it. With people who pass away without a will, they have to make sure that the family has been notified and make sure that everyone in the same degree, meaning spouses, children, perhaps grandchildren, if a child has passed away before the person who passed away, have been notified. You know, the law requires notice and that everybody gets notified. So there's a process. Once the court is satisfied with this, they will have the executor of the will or the administrator of the estate come in and take an oath. It's either called the executor's oath or the administrator's oath. And all of this just takes time. Once all of that has happened, the court will issue either a document called letters testamentary or a document called letters of administration. It is that document that gives the executor or the administrator the power to do all the things that they need to do. Like maybe they need to sell property, maybe they need to access frozen bank accounts or frozen investment accounts. Do all the things that they need to do. Until they get this document, they have no power. So typically what will happen is that the family will pay for yard work, pay to keep the utilities on, pay for expenses out of their pocket until they can get this document called letters testamentary or letters of administration, and then they can be reimbursed for those expenses once they're able to access the person's bank accounts. Until then, it's just simply frozen. So getting that document is a very important milestone in the probate process. That typically will take months to get that document. So there's a lot of work that goes on in between that time. So the first thing I wanted to check out with these 10 cases is when they were filed, and secondly, when did the family receive the letters testamentary or the letters of administration. Of those 10 cases, I will tell you I was not all that surprised with the answer. For some, it took a long time. For some, it was very quick. In fact, one of those 10 got the letters of administration, I believe, the next day. That is a very oddball case. Now, on the other end of that, there is one of those 10 cases that still do not have the letters of administration or letters testamentary, and that was about a year and a half ago. Most of them fall in between, somewhere between 1 day, which is very weird, and a year and a half, which is very weird also. So the average time it took those 10 cases to get the letters of administration, actually I take that back, the time it took for 9 of those cases to get the letters of administration or letters testamentary, because remember, one of them still doesn't have it, was 5.5 months. So 5.5 months from the day they file it, they get the letters testamentary or the letters of administration. From here on out, I'll just call them letters because it will apply to both of them. So the average case here in probate court takes about 5.5 months to get the letters. Now, I knew that to be true because I do probate work. Some are a little bit shorter than that, some are a little bit longer than that. So I knew that about 6 months was about the average time it took to get the letters. So what happens in between the time that you file it and the time that you get the letters gives you the power to sell property, access frozen bank accounts. That's the time that the family has to deal with all of the utilities and keeping up the yard work and paying it out of their own pocket. So that is a very important time. So the average time it takes for a case here in Cobb County to get the letters is about 5.5 months, or we'll round up to 6 months. And I know that happens to be true in almost every county. There's 159 counties here in Georgia, and so that is about the average time it takes to get letters in a probate case. So then the next milestone is, now that you've gotten the letters, how long does it take to actually do all the things that you're supposed to do? Like distribute out the assets. You know, if the will said I want to divide equally amongst my children, how long did it take them to get the access to the bank accounts and sell the property and divide everything up amongst the family, notify creditors? There's all kinds of things that you have to do after you get the letters. How long has it taken those families to do it? In other words, once they've done all the things that they're supposed to do, they ask the court to close the file. So how long has it taken for, once it's filed, it takes about 6 months to get the letters, and then how long does it take for them to do the things that they're supposed to do and actually close out the case? Well, here is something that's pretty remarkable. Of those 10 cases, 8 of them are still ongoing. Only 2 of those 10 have actually been closed. So a year and a half after the family has filed the will or has filed to let the court know that the person passed away without a will, 8 of those 10 cases are still ongoing. So in other words, you have, or your family has, an 80% chance of still dealing with your probate if your family has to go through probate a year and a half after they file the paperwork. So the average case here in Georgia used to be about a year, but now it looks like time is just ticking and things have gotten more complicated. And right now it's taking about a year and a half. These cases are still ongoing. Who knows how much longer it's going to take? I know this to be true. I have very few that actually take less than a year to probate. Most of them take over a year and a half. I'm not surprised that 80% of these cases are still ongoing. You should be surprised, because when people come in and they want to talk to me about estate planning, they'll often think that it's just a simple process and their family's not going to have to go through a lot once they pass away. But just studying the first 10 cases that were filed in the year 2022, you can see that 80% of those cases are still ongoing a year and a half later. It took the family 6 months just to get the letters, and those cases are still open. Probate is not an easy process. Now, you'll say, well, I had a family member pass away and it took 6 months to do it. Yeah, that's somewhat anecdotal. All cases take different times. The average case takes a long time. And I'm going to say the average case takes about a year. Well, it seems now these days it's taking about a year and a half. It just takes a long time to go through probate because there's a lot of factors that go into it. All right, so that's all we really have to talk about today. Again, the probate case is, probate takes about a year and a half here in Georgia, and that seems like a long time, and it is a long time, but it may not be if you start comparing it with other places like Florida or California or New York. But most people would want to try to avoid that for their family, and there are ways to avoid it. So here in Georgia, the average probate case, I'm going to say, is going to take about a year, but now they're starting to run about a year and a half. All right, so there's a lot of things that go into the probate process, and we'll have other videos that talk about that. This is just really wanting to do a case study of 10 cases that have been filed with the probate court here in Cobb County, and all of those cases were filed in January of 2022. All right, so that's really all we have to talk about today. Remember to subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos every Tuesday and Friday, and make sure that you hit the like button because every like helps.